Well, I started drawing when I was at a young age. There was one instance, I remember my mom and my brother always telling me this story of the time I was caught drawing with a pen underneath a coffee table, and another time that was like a paper Christmas ornament that was drawn upon. I don't really remember ever doing that one, but I don't know. It didn't really look like it was my artistic style. And another memory I have is always going over to Grandma Shenberger's house, and she would have these, she'd just have stacks of paper upstairs on the desk, and I could always draw on that. I mean, some people talk about when they were a kid they had a favorite toy. Well, if I had a paper and some pencils, then I could entertain myself for a couple hours. As for Sam's Comics as a series, that really started in 2006. I had been homeschooled my whole life. I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. I mean, you don't get around as much when you're homeschooled. But I did make some friends through church, and we had a youth group going, and I was a very shy kid to begin with, so that didn't help me in making friends before then. But they all knew that I could draw, so one way that I kind of became a way of interacting with them was I started drawing all of us and made this into a comic series, and that kind of was an icebreaker. Oh, you'd think it would be an icebreaker at least, and it worked. It really did. That's kind of how season 1 began. Season 1 kind of went all the way through 2006, and eventually kind of faded away halfway through 2007. There were certain things that happened in 2007. I don't want to talk about them, but I stopped seeing my friends as often, and it was about a year later in 2008, almost a whole year later, and I was kind of just in this kind of depressed state, and remember three of my friends, Bailey, Kenzie, and their cousin Ian, just out of the blue showed up at my house, and we hung out for a little bit, and I was so happy to see them, and I showed them some more of the comics, because I had quite a few comics done in the 2006 to 2007 period, but there were a couple that I hadn't shown anybody before, and I brought those out and showed it to them, and they loved them. And I remember Kenzie coming up to me and saying, "Are you still making these?" And I said no, and she said, "Well, you ought to." And that's how season 2 started up in 2008. Season 2 ran into 2009. The thing about season 2 that was different about season 1 as well was the fact that by then there was Facebook, and more people were able to see my comics than just my friends, showing it to them directly. So more people got to see them, more people were enjoying them, and I had more of a desire to write more so other people could enjoy them. And that's kind of how the series really developed, and season 3 was kind of when I decided I wanted to keep it up and continue to make series. That season 3 also kind of was a awkward situation, just because that was kind of the point where I had a writer's block, and I stopped knowing what to do with the series. And season 3 as a whole only totaled 25 comics total, so it was kind of a not so great of a series. What came after season 3, however, was production for Sam's Comics the movie. That kind of took the place of another season for that year. And after the movie was made, came season 4, which kind of was the defining moment of the entire series, because it was when a lot of new characters were added, a lot of more a background added to it. It was like, now it takes place in this like fictional world, this fictional town. The characters, they are attending this fictional school. It was more of a story than the previous ones were. Previous ones were just kind of like mix and match kind of situations that I put my friends and myself into. But season 4 was as much as I say that season 3 was when I kind of started taking it more seriously, season 4 was when it actually happened, when I actually did start trying to take it more seriously as a series of fictional comics rather than just my friends and I in comics. And it was followed up by season 5, which was just as popular as season 4, and season 4 was very popular, and then came season 6, and now we're going to be going into season 7, so that pretty much, in like the bare minimal of terms, is how the comics came into being. It all started off, as I mentioned, with my friends and myself were the characters in the series. I kind of decided early on that for it to really work, I had to be the main character of the series, because it was going to be told through my point of view and everything like that. It was just, I did it just to make it easier, not because I wanted to be like, oh, this series is about me. No, it was a decision to make it easier because I could tell it from my own point of view, and just to make it easier for me as a writer to do it. And I wasn't very good at drawing people back then, I should say. I didn't draw people very much. I usually drew like SpongeBob and R2-D2 and things like that, but never people so much. So Sans Comics was kind of when I started drawing people as more. As the series went on, I was looking at it more literally, like Sam in the comics, this is me, or this is Bailey, or Kenzie, this is Kenzie. But it really, as the series progressed, it really started to go different ways, and I had to really stop and think. Like, there were jokes that I didn't want to do because I thought, like, if I find it funny, but at the same time, that's not necessarily Kenzie. So if I had her do this, is she going to think of it like Sam thinks of me this way? Is that really what he thinks? And it was kind of an awkward situation. And finally I got to the point where I suddenly realized it's just, I had to stop looking at everybody like they were the actual people. They had to be characters. And the way I did it was to just take an aspect of everybody's personality, because every single person in the comics, with like one or two exceptions, is based on a friend of mine. So what I would have to do was take one or more traits from each person and then just blow it ridiculously out of proportion, so everybody knows that it's not meant to be them literally. It's just a character. It's not Sam Shenberger, it's Sam Shoemaker. It's not Bailey Freemeyer, it's Bailey Freeberg. And it has to keep going on like that. Take like Sam's insecurity, or Bailey's good-hearted nature, or Brian's outgoing personality. Keep them together and just blow them out of proportion. They become a character themselves, and that's kind of how I try to look at them. Sam, as a character, he appeared in the first comic along with Bailey. They were the first two introduced, with another third character who didn't last past season 1. But he started off, he was super gullible, which, like, I was at the time. And he was insecure, which I was at the time, and still kind of am. And he was just kind of like this awkward teen that didn't know right from left. He was still trying to find his way in the world. That was kind of fun to play around with. And I didn't mind doing that to myself, because I knew it was true. It was trying to make a joke out of it. He always did kind of have a little bit of trouble with the ladies early on. And that was a running joke. And there was also the running joke that he had a crush on someone. That was it was a joke that was dropped, but then kind of resurfaced as a subplot in the movie. As time kind of went on, Sam has essentially stayed the same as a character. I think I don't really think of Sam so much as a main character as much as he is an observer. Like it's like I said, where if it's told through my point of view, it's Sam is just kind of there. He doesn't. He's not usually the funny one. He's just kind of the one watching it as it happens. For anything like that to work, Sam had to have a best friend character. In Season 1, there was one character who didn't last past Season 1. Season 2, there was another character who didn't last past Season 2. But also in Season 2 was added Ryan, who has remained to be in the series to this day. And he in real life was my best friend, Ryan. So he's kind of been around for a long time. He served the originally was kind of there to serve the purpose of the best friend for Sam, someone for Sam to kind of bounce off of, and he developed even more past that. He was kind of like the super awesome, everybody looks up to him, he's the cool guy, he's the kind of, maybe it's a tiny bit arrogant, he's super outgoing, and he's always the awesome one, the shades and everything like that. And Ryan's a lot of fun to write stuff for. He's a kind of, he and Sam, they're not really similar when you take a look at the characters, because he's so confident, he's outgoing, he's everything that Sam wishes he could be. But that makes for a great pair in the series. Bailey has always been around since the beginning. She was one of the first characters to be introduced. Even though she wasn't mentioned by name in the first comic, she was in the first comic. And she has remained to be one of the 3 characters who has been around since the first season. She's the nice one, the pretty girl next door kind of type. And when we came to the movie, she was the love interest character, which again, when we get to talking about the movie, I'll explain why that was later. But as a character, Bailey was always kind of the one. She didn't really have as much development, but she was an important part to the series, and I always felt like she needed to be there. Bailey and Kenzie were always the two. Is like, if the series didn't have either of them, then I kind of felt like I didn't have the series at all. And they're 2 of my best friends in real life, so I can't imagine it without them both. Kenzie is the other character who has been around since the beginning of the series. Now, she's a little bit of a different story. I always kind of did take her a little less seriously in the comics. She was always kind of the voice of sarcasm early on, and it kind of grew more and more sarcastic and more snarky as time went on, and it was kind of like the exact opposite of Kenzie in real life, because she may have been a little bit sarcastic when she was younger, but as she was growing up, she became less and less sarcastic, and to this day, I don't really see Kenzie the way she was in the comics and Kenzie the way she is right now. They're almost like 2 different characters, but I've kept her the same in the comics for A, consistency's sake, and B, because it's funnier. And Kenzie in real life, she's an amazing person. Now we get to Molly. Molly is the younger sibling of Bailey and Kenzie. When I started drawing Molly, she was literally just a combination of Bailey and Kenzie. She was kind of the quiet one who never really said anything. She was just kind of there. Her biggest joke in the series was actually an accident, where her big joke is that she can only say 1 sentence per comic strip, and that was completely coincidental, because in all of Season 2, when she was first introduced, and most of Season 3, she was only ever shown speaking 1 sentence at a time in 1 comic. And it's not necessarily true, because in Season 3 there were at least 2 comics where she reached 2 sentences in a single strip, but for the most part she only ever spoke once, and she would never speak again until like the next comic. So that became a running joke in the series, and I think it's kind of a weird contrast between how Molly in the series differs from Molly in the movie. I keep saying it, but again, later when we get to the movie I'll explain. With Season 4, that was when we started adding even more characters. There's a little bit of a story behind that as well, which I had never added very many characters at a time to any of the seasons, because In season 2, I added a whole lot of characters, but I had replaced most of the characters from season 1 in season 2, so that's kind of why I added more. And out of that, only Ryan, Rachel, and Molly survived from season 2 into season 3. And then with season 4, I didn't want to add too many characters, so I decided I was only going to add 3 new characters. And I had like 6 characters lined up that I wanted to be in season 4, and I was going to hold them back to be in the next season 5. And they were Shannon, Frank, Sarah, Gabri, Alino, and Carl. And I knew I wanted all of them to be in the series eventually, but I had to narrow it down to just 3 because I didn't want to add too many new characters. In the end, I knew Shannon and Frank were 2 characters that absolutely had to be in season 4, but it was a little harder to decide who the 3rd character was going to be. I ruled out Carl just because in the movie Carl had played the villain Jack Weidman, and I kind of felt like if I added Carl and if you've seen the movie and then you read season 4, you're going to think that Carl is Jack, and I didn't want to do that. I did it anyway, but I didn't want to initially. Also, I ruled out Gabri and Alino, which I really wanted Gabri in it, but in the end I decided to go with Sarah because I felt like I could do more with her and make it funny. But after that, it got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I don't care. I want all of them in this. I'm gonna add all of them into this. So season 4 had already started, and I decided that Gabri needed to be in it. And if I was like, you know what, I'm gonna add all of them. So I put Alino into it as well, and then I put Carl into it as well. And I do not regret that decision at all. I was afraid to do it because I didn't want to just throw in a whole bunch of new characters, but season 4 ended up being the most successful season out of all of them. It's my personal favorite out of all the seasons, so I do not regret adding all those characters, and they've really revitalized the series, because I kind of felt like it was kind of starting to go downhill with season 3 because it was only 25 comics long. I had serious writer's block, and then adding these new characters, it really brought it back up. Even more people were reading the comics because Shannon and Frank and Sarah and Gabri, they all had friends. They were now reading it. It was all great. I loved it. And some of the best jokes I feel came from that season as well, because interaction with the real people in real life inspired me so much more to write even more comics, and I could still use all my old characters as well, and it worked so perfectly. And that carried on into season 5 as well, when I added Caroline in as Gabri's best friend. After that came season 6. Season 6, I decided not to add any new characters, just because there were so many characters in the series by that point. And then season 7, I'm adding a whole slew of new characters in again. But season 7 is going to be really different. A lot of characters are going to be said goodbye to as well, because this season 7 is going to be the final season of the comics. So it's a real kind of bittersweet thing, and I'm definitely going to miss the series. When I started it back in 2006, I never imagined I would be doing it for 7 seasons and an entire feature film about it. So it was a crazy ride and everything. I don't know what else to say. Drawing is one of my hobbies. It's one of my longest running hobbies, but I also really enjoy video making as well. It's what I'm going to school for now, but when I first started college back when I was in community college, there was a film club on that campus that I was a part of. I was one of the core members of that club. At the end of 2010, they were talking about how at the beginning of the new year, which was 2011, they were going to be having a script pitch section where we were going to come up with stories and pitch them to each other and see which ones we liked, which ones we wanted to make. And I came at them with 3 scripts. The third one was the comic script, which hadn't even been written at all. It was just kind of an idea. None of my ideas got picked. We went with another one that we eventually had to drop for various reasons.
So what's this all about, Sam?
Another club member, Travis, came up to me and he told me that they had dropped the first one, the original script, and that they wanted to do my comic script. So that, and I wrote it in less than a week. It was kind of fun writing it because I already had the story. I just needed to put it onto paper. I went with this story. It was kind of it was kind of based off of an older script of mine called Legend of the Black Arrow, which was a kind of Indiana Jones-ish script about trying to find a black arrowhead necklace. And I kind of carried that over into the comic script. You just kind of have some sort of conflict about it because I really liked that idea. And I don't know, Native American arrowheads have always kind of intrigued me. I don't know why. It's just one of those things. This was right at the period right after season 3 when I didn't really know what to do with the comics as a series. And I thought about trying to animate, and that didn't go anywhere. But then when this came along, I thought we could just do a live action because a lot of, actually all of the characters at that point were based off real people. So I contacted them all. Most of them were interested in doing it, but then Ryan and Rachel weren't able to do it because Ryan was living in Colorado at the time for school, and Rachel similarly was otherwise engaged. I had hopes originally that I was just going to write it and I was going to star in it. I didn't have to do anything else. I was hoping someone else would direct it, but unfortunately that didn't happen. I had to both direct and edit it as well. I did pretty much everything on that film, not gonna lie. But I had a lot of fun doing it all, and it was definitely a learning experience, and I think it's been an advantage now that I'm in film school that I've had all this experience under my belt. The thing I wanted to do in the story for the comics movie was that I wanted to have characters kind of move away from the mold that they were kind of in from the comics, kind of like have them act a tiny bit out of character but not completely out of character. Start seeing like what happens when they start doing things they wouldn't normally do in the comics. I think the story of the movie was a lot about pushing Sam to the extreme. The comic carnage scene, as I call it, the scene when Sam's ripping up all the papers. That scene was not actually in the script. It was added to kind of showcase the emotional wreck that Sam was becoming, and it was also written to, it was also added, I should say, to incorporate the actual comics in it, because at that point there was like one scene where you actually saw the comics themselves. And I remember I hadn't told anybody about that scene because I wasn't sure if I actually wanted it to be in the final film. I was kind of a little self-conscious about it because I didn't know, was it going too far to have him with this emotional breakdown of just tearing up everything he's ever worked on and pretty much destroying himself. I thought, because that was a huge deal, I thought it might be just a little too intense, and I didn't tell anybody about it, but I handed Carl a rough cut of it to show, and I wasn't there when he saw it the first time, but I remember hearing from our club advisor the following week. He said Carl watched the scene and he told him, the advisor, that he was very impressed with the acting that I did, and I thought it was terribly acted. So I got an indirect comment out of him, or indirect compliment out of him. Or you have Bailey, who's this kind of, she's the nice girl, she doesn't do anything wrong, it's like she's incapable of doing anything wrong, and then what if she starts falling for this guy who's completely wrong for her, and she starts doing things, and then I like the idea of having a sibling storyline, which is another fallback of mine in scripts. I like doing stories about siblings, and I knew I wanted to have some sort of sibling, maybe not rivalry, but antagonism with Kenzie. I thought about doing it with Kenzie and Bailey, but then that didn't really make much sense to me because of age difference, with Bailey being the older sister. It would seem weird that the younger sister would be not really bullying, but being like that to the older sibling. So it came down to Molly, and Molly became actually more important to the script than I ever intended her to be. And at that point in the series, Molly really hadn't done a whole lot as a character. She was introduced in season 2, and she only said one sentence per comic strip, which is kind of how the running joke started, even though it wasn't noticed until season 4, the year after the movie was made. But there was always the sense that Molly was just kind of a background character. She never really did much. And then when we shot the movie, it was actually kind of Molly's moment to shine, especially the way she was written in the original script. It was good. It was really good. She ended up being my favorite character of the script, the way I had written her. Because one thing that I couldn't put my hand on it at first, but now looking back on it, I realized is that you had all the characters in the series were kind of doing their own thing and kind of moving away from who they were, but Molly was the one who didn't move away from where she was. Molly was the one who stayed consistent the whole time. And that thing that I couldn't put my hand on was that Molly kind of, as a character, represented innocence, which is something that I think the script really needed. And it was unfortunate that her scenes didn't really, a lot of her scenes didn't end up being filmed because scheduling was a nightmare for that movie. But still, looking back on the script, Molly was one of my favorite characters, and just by her character alone makes her one of the best characters that I've ever written in a script. When I wrote the script, there was no love story involved. It was just kind of a friendship story about how loyalty is important in friendship. I remember pitching that idea to the film club, and they didn't particularly like that idea. They knew they wanted to have some kind of love story involved, and I kind of backed away from it, saying I don't really want to do that to anybody because these are not just characters; these are also real people, and I didn't want to force that upon anyone. And going by it, the logical answer to a love story would have to be between Sam as the main character and Bailey, because she had an important part and she was the one with the necklace. So and I resisted that a lot. In the end, we had to go with it just because I realized after we started filming that the story was really falling flat. And the weirdest thing about it too was the fact that we had shot nearly all of Bailey's scenes without the love story involved, but then the last day of filming for her was the day that we started filming those scenes. So it was a super last second idea, and we kind of had to backtrack and shoot other scenes to kind of fill it up, to kind of make sure you did get the point across that Sam really did like her and all that.
You guys have been friends for the past 5 years, and everybody knows that you guys got a thing for each other.
Wait. They know we have a thing for each other? Bailey has a thing for me too?
Yeah.
And it tied into the original season 1 running joke that Sam had a crush on one of the characters in the series. Who it was never said who it was. So the movie kind of fell back on it and directly stated that it was Bailey the whole time. Whether or not it was is that's something I'm not going to say here. That's up for audience interpretation. Carl was really the glue that held the movie together, though, because scheduling was a super issue between a lot of the cast and all this stuff, but throughout it all, Carl was always there for me, and he was always willing to do things for the film. And I remember at the time, he would get on my nerves at the time, and I would get on his nerves, and so we didn't necessarily have the best of relationships starting out, but by the end of it, I was super lucky to have him, and I really hope I get to work with him again, because looking back on Sam's Comics, it would not have been made without him, and I owe him a lot. One of the things about the story as well was the fact that Ryan was a huge character in the story. Because Ryan in real life was unable to play himself in the film, we had to recast him. Anyway.
Name's Travis Cooper. I'm auditioning for Ryan.
Unfortunately, scheduling became a huge issue again, and we couldn't shoot a lot of Ryan scenes with Ryan in them. So some of them we just had to kind of write him out and make excuses for.
Hey, where's Ryan? I thought he'd be here with you guys.
He's got a doctor's appointment, so he's a no-show.
And then other scenes we replaced him with Nick as a character, and that kind of became Nick's defining moment as well as Molly's, because Nick had only been introduced in season 3, and so he didn't have a whole lot of time in that season to develop as a character. The movie kind of jump-started him.
He had a great sense of comedic timing, which I think just had to have come natural. Looking back at some of the footage, he was a real comedic genius.
Okay, you do that. I'm gonna go visit the urination station.
Okay.
What?
And Rachel was also not a fully developed character in the comics at that point either. We had someone cast originally for her because Rachel in real life couldn't play herself. And then that person backed out on us right before filming began. But then while we were filming, my friend Shannon agreed to play her. So we wrote her back in. It kind of became a bit of a problem though, because Shannon had already filmed one sequence with Travis and me, with of course Travis playing her older brother. We had filmed a classroom scene together where the three of us are in a class, and she was just an extra, but she was later cast as Rachel, so we had to make an excuse as to why Rachel was in the classroom with them if she's Ryan's younger sister, who's 2 years younger than him. She's super smart. She's your little sister, and she's in the same grade as us. I mean,
Rachel the Brains?
Rachel the Brains? Really, Nick? You can't come up with anything better?
and so I came up with the storyline that Rachel was actually super smart and that she was in the same grade as us, and that carried over into the following seasons of comics and became Rachel's character trait. Shannon, of course, became a character in the series herself after the movie, as well as Carl did as well.
So this is it? Status goes back to normal?
Maybe not exactly.
Why is that?
So for drawing the comics, really they all kind of have what I call a base face, where really if you take anything about the face, you can kind of turn it into anybody's face just by doing this. And hold on, I forgot to get something to erase with.
So I don't think using my fingers would be a very good idea.
So like you can start like with this as the base of the face, and just like if you make Sam out of it by adding the trademark hair, which the hair is really what defines all the characters, because really there isn't a whole lot of differences in between the facial features themselves. Sometimes there are. Most of the time there isn't, but like Sam, like you can easily turn Sam into a number of other characters, like Ryan, for example. I'm not used to drawing on a whiteboard, so some of these might look a little more exaggerated than they do normally. Just to add a little bit more variety to some of the facial structures being different, you can also take this and do the face a little more sharply like that, and you pretty much got Nick like that. Female characters are pretty much the same deal. Now, usually with the female characters there is more differences in between the facial structures, mainly because there are more female characters in the series, which, yeah, get on my level. Basic face, it's kind of not the most angled. It kind of looks more like Kenzie to me, so let's turn it into Kenzie. With the ponytail. And there you have Kenzie like that. So you can take that, and since I have Kenzie here, I'm just going to go ahead and do Molly, because their facial structures are almost identical, but instead of the bangs are a little different. Obviously the hair is different. So Molly has the freckle. That looks terrible. Molly has the freckles, and so do that, and you have Molly. You can also the more pointed chin, rounded like that, go like that, that. You can turn it into Bailey like that, or another character who basically has the same facial structure. I hope I'm not standing in front of the thing the entire time while I'm drawing. I can't really tell where I'm standing on the screen. And why do I keep dropping the stupid napkin? Shannon, who has a similar facial structure to Bailey. So really, Hope that doesn't destroy any magic of the series, because it's kind of a cheap trick doing it all like that. Structurally, there are a few differences in between how I draw male characters and how I draw female characters. I mean, well, there is the obvious, but it is more than just that. Like, it really comes down to like the eyes. So, like, this is how male characters' eyes are drawn. They have the full eyebrows on them, whereas female characters have just lined eyebrows, and their eyes are a little differently. They still have the 2 dots, but they also have the eyelashes. Someone called this like half Kermit eyes, because you know Kermit has the eyes like that. That's a terrible Kermit. But the key thing that differentiates the characters from each other, because there aren't a whole lot of differentiations in between the way the characters look, is just through things like their hairstyles and their shirts. Because you know, Sam has the long hair. It's got the swoop, and the sticks out on the that would be his right. It just sticks out on the right side, and it has the 5 lines for the bangs, which this is a recurring thing where usually when there's lines in the hair, they're all, or really not just lines, but usually if there's any kind of detail to the hair, it's usually in either 5s, 2s, or 3s. It's almost never in 1s or 4s. So you have like that, which is Sam's hair. Ryan, who has like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2 right there. And I don't really know what that one just kind of is one of the ones that's irregular. And it's true on the female characters as well. When there's it's always in 2s or 3s. So like Bailey usually doesn't have any swoops in her hair, but Molly does. So like she has the bangs like that, and then down to here. She has 2 on the top and then 2 on the side, and then sometimes 2 there, not always. Gabri has as well. So she, an interesting thing is that it was kind of hinted at, and it was another one of those things I never confirmed or denied. I just kind of like playing with you guys and see what interpretation you like. Was that there was a joke that Sam and Gabri might be cousins, and the reason I chose Gabri is because there are actually a lot of similarities between the way Sam and Gabri are drawn. So like Sam's bangs are like this and Gabri's are like this. Like Sam has 3 and she has 2, and then Sam has the swoop and she has a swoop like that. Sam has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She has 1, 2, and then drawn like that. She has 1 like that. Because not like these are the only 2 characters whose hairs are drawn like that, with the part going sideways on the top as well. So there is also the fact that in all the colored ones, they always wear the same color shirts. Shirt designs is another thing that differentiates characters. But like Sam, his design has always been the what I call the 3 mountains. It was originally based on a t-shirt that I have in real life of Napoleon Dynamite. It had Napoleon, Kip, and Rico on the couch, and it said Dynamite Family. At one point, I actually did draw all of that onto the shirt early on in season 1, but then as time went on, I got lazy and drew triangles and 2 lines underneath it. And Ryan's shirt just says security on it. There are some characters who don't have designs on their shirts, so like Bailey doesn't have a design, but what she has is a necklace on the thing. I'm not even going to try to make this look good, but she has the necklace Nick's shirt, which it says bacon on it, and then has a strip of bacon and a Facebook like thing on it. There was a running joke about that because this was actually a joke from a scene in the comics movie script where Nick had a joke about liking bacon so much. That scene didn't get filmed because we had to drop it, but in season 5 the idea resurfaced and I put it on his shirt just as a kind of nod. No one would really know about it unless well, now they're going to know about it because I talked about it, but no one else would have known the significance of that. Kenzie's shirt, this is a shirt that's been around since the first season. She's never really, well, yeah, she has, what am I spelling? Technical difficulties, sorry. there have been some changes to Kenzie's shirt over the season. But in season 1 it said American Eagle, and there actually, I think there was a hyphen in there, which again was based on an actual shirt that Kenzie wore in real life. But as the seasons went on, it was shortened to just American, and the hyphen was omitted. And it stayed the same ever since until season 6, when it became a striped shirt, and she wore a jacket over it. So, but then in season 7, I'm now switching it back to the original design because I liked it better. And that's really all I can say about shirts, I guess, because then we start getting into characters who have other types of clothing. Like Shannon has a tank top, and Gabri also has a tank top. Sarah has a hoodie. The outfits and the hairstyles are the things that really differentiate them, and stuff like that. And as the series have gone on, I've tried to add more individuality to them. Like Nick was the only character, or actually he's still the only character who has his shape of face with the, it's more of a sharper jawline. Caroline has a unique shape of face as well, or has a different chin. Kenzie's face is kind of different too, which it's not as unique anymore because Molly also has this one, and now Carl does as well. And then there was always the generic one, just that it kind of looks too much like that, but maybe not. Then the other generic one, which was just kind of rounded, which most of the female characters had the rounded face, and most of the male characters had the not rounded face. Noses are, for whatever reason, the hardest thing to draw. Like, I basically have 3 kinds of noses. There's like the generic nose, there's like this nose, which Nick has that kind of nose, and I've used it a couple other times. And then there was this nose, the more pointed kind, which is used very, very rarely. I've been trying to find more and more ways. I think I also have like somewhat more rounded. It's kind of like in between those two, where it's more curved like that one, but it's more rounded on the bulge like that. Noses, I just don't know. They're just hard. They're the hardest thing. But other than that, there's really nothing else I could say about drawing them. And I guess the documentary will move on to the next part, really.
Well, the comics have been an important part of my life, really. It's always been kind of this thing that has brought a lot of my friends together. A lot of them I've never even met in real life, and it's always been fun to draw them, and it's been fun to combine hobbies of mine, like with the making of the comics movies, and I've also done other comics related video things too. Like there was the Christmas video that I did just last Christmas, and I actually plan on doing more of those kinds of things too. I don't know if it'll continue on past when season 7's over, but maybe. I do not intend to stop drawing after season 7. Season 7 is kind of the final season, but I'm not going to say it's like the end of that series, period. I might still do the occasional comic if I feel so inclined, and I also might do other things. Like there's always the artwork portraits as well, where I take movie posters and kind of comicify them and things like that. So this isn't necessarily the end of Sam's Comics as a series. It's just kind of the end of me doing things as a structured season. And I'm going to do a lot of things for this season 7 that I haven't normally done. Like this isn't the first time I've done story-driven things. That's what most of the subsets are for like Sam's Comics The Origins, which was telling how the characters first met each other, and then there was When Movies Become Reality, which will come into play in season 7 as well, as kind of a backstory thing. So if you haven't read that one, you might want to go back and read it before going into season 7. But season 7 as a whole is going to be story-driven, and it's not going to be like the entire season is one continuous story. Like you're going to have story, and then the next week's story, and then the next week's story, and the next week's story. It's going to be like story jokes, story jokes, story jokes. And because I feel like if I did just entirely story driven, it wouldn't be the same. It just wouldn't be Sam's Comics. It would be something completely different. And I really do want this last one to be more story driven, because this is going to be the last one. It's going to be the final chapter. People are going to be said goodbye to, and that's kind of the thing that I've been working on the most, is making sure that every character has a proper send-off. I've got a couple of them written already, and others I'm still trying to figure out, so that'll be interesting. I guess in closing, I just want to say thanks to everybody who's ever read my comics or supported me or follows my blog, liked it on Facebook, commented on it, what have you. I want to just say a huge thank you to all of you, and it's been amazing and everything. I'm not real good at these kinds of things, so I don't really know what to say other than thank you. I guess you could say this is just me saying goodbye, and soon enough the characters in the series will say goodbye as well. So be on the lookout for season 7, and thank you for watching this documentary, and I hope you learned a little something about it as well. So, thank you.